And looks like we are all here with our participants, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome to the November Staten Island Borough Board. And what we'll do first and foremost is if we could all rise and say the pledge. Jerry, do you have a flag?
I always have a flag.
Of course you do. Thank you for that. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the republic
for which it
stands
one nation
under
under
God, indivisible,
with
liberty
and
justice for all.
for all.
Jerry, thank you so much for representing. Just one quick order of business before we begin. I did send out minutes from the October meeting yesterday. If I could entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion to accept.
Jerry, could I have a second?
Second that.
Sorry, Brianna, that was you?
I second that.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you for that. Then for this month, we have the Department of Buildings, Holly Savoy and her team to talk about the Local Law 97. Holly, the floor is yours.
Great.
Would you like me to make you the presenter?
Let's see if my screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so I'm gonna do it in slideshow view. Okay. So Local Law 97, also known as Reducing Greenhouse Gas Emissions from New York City Buildings, is being presented today. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about some of the precursor laws that came before Local Law 97. In 2009, we had the Greener Greater Buildings Plan. So that was Local Law 84, benchmarking, 85, the New York City's Energy Conservation Code, 87 was audits and retro commissioning, and 88 was lighting upgrades and submetering. Some of these were amended in 2016 by the One City Built to Last, specifically 84 and 88. The threshold on the building sizes changed for those two laws from 50,000 square feet down to 25,000 square feet. And Local Law 88 was amended by 132 and 134. So it was split into two separate local laws. As far as the New York City Climate Mobilization Act, that contains Local Laws 92 and 94, which require roofs of certain buildings to be covered in either green roofs or solar PV systems or both. Local Law 95 works with the benchmarking law, and that adds a building energy efficiency grade. You may see them on the entrances to some larger buildings. They look like the restaurant signs. Local Law 96 established a Sustainability Energy Loan Program, otherwise known as PACE, and Local Law 97, which we're talking about today, which is the achievement of reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. So a little bit of some of the high-level goals for 97. By 2030, the law is expected to achieve 6 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reductions, over 26,000 jobs that will be created, and 150 hospitalizations avoided, and 50 to 130 deaths prevented per year. Local Law 97 works with the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, otherwise known as the CLCPA, which says that 70% of the electricity coming from the grid will be from renewable sources by 2030, and they are aiming to achieve zero emission electricity by 2040. And these are some interesting things to keep in mind when we're talking about 97. So the basics of 97 are that greenhouse gas emissions limits are imposed on buildings that are over 25,000 square feet. So it's mostly your large, mid-sized to larger buildings. The emissions are reported May 1st of every year for the prior calendar year. So you measure your emissions from January 1st through December 31st, and then you report on them the following May 1st. And the city buildings have to reduce their emissions by 40% by 2025 and 50% by 2030. NYCHA buildings also are subject to the same requirements as the private sector, but they comply portfolio wide. So not building by building, but as a group. So the way it works is that each property has a GHG or greenhouse gas budget based on the property types that are contained within the spaces of the building and property. A registered architect or professional engineer will need to calculate the building's GHG budget and report those annual GHG emissions for the property. Those GHG emissions that exceed the budget will be subject to a penalty of up to $268 per metric ton of CO2 equivalent. So the emissions can come from two places. They can come from the building or they can come from the grid. And to achieve these emissions reductions, building owners are going to be required to make carbon reduction efforts at their buildings, switching fuels, but also the grid will have to become cleaner. So like we talked about in the goals for New York State in making the grid more renewable, that has to happen simultaneously with the reductions at the building level. So the emissions reductions achieved by 97 will mitigate the impacts of climate change and provide improved health citywide and increase comfort within the buildings. The city is leading by example. City properties have more stringent targets than the private buildings do. And currently, we're seeing that the DCAS buildings are outperforming their emissions targets that are provided in the law. And again, NYCHA has portfolio-wide targets. So you're going to hear things like Article 320 and Article 321 buildings. They refer to two different types of buildings. Article 320 are your privately held buildings, and Article 321 are your affordable housing or houses of worship. And then portfolio-wide reductions are NYCHA and city buildings. So for the Article 320 privately held buildings, compliance begins in 2024. So come January 1st, 2024, the emissions are going to start being counted. The report for the year 2024 will be due in May of 2025, and that's when the penalties will begin. The limits for each building are for the property types are the same for 2024 through 2029. In 2030, they get ratcheted down to become stricter. For the 321 buildings, the affordable housing and houses of worship buildings, they must implement prescriptive measures by 2024, or they can show that they meet the stricter 2030 limits now. And they have a one-time report in 2025. And then DCAS and NYCHA, they report portfolio-wide. DCAS has to start reporting in 2025 and NYCHA in 2030. So the timeline that is here, local law was 97 was passed in 2019. In 2021, the Department of Buildings rolled out an adjustments program. So that was for 320.8 and 320.9. Again, privately held buildings where they were either more than 40% over their limits due to a special circumstance, and 320.9 was for hospitals or not-for-profit healthcare systems. That program closed in 2021, but it's been reopened, and the deadline for that has been extended to the end of 2024. So then we get into the first compliance period in 2025, 2024 through 2025, and then the rent regulated. There are different categories, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And then the second period comes in 2030 and 30 through 34, and so on until 2050 and beyond. So the Local Law 97 mobilization plan includes enhanced funding and financing. So there is money out there from the federal government, the state, from utilities, and the city. And there's financing targeted to 97 compliance, and that's what the mobilization is going going to work towards getting that money to be applied towards 97 projects. We're doing comprehensive outreach with New York City Accelerator. Catherine Willis is here to talk to us about what Accelerator does today. And there are implementation task forces that are being convened. There's one on workforce and retrofit companies. There's one for building owners and managers, and one for financiers. As far as enforcement is concerned, there was just recently released a second major rule package of proposed rules, the public meeting for which just passed last week. So for the first major rule package, that rule became effective on January 19th of this year, and it included guidance on calculations, reporting, compliance requirements, and building emissions limits. And the second major compliance package, the rule package that's still proposed, it hasn't been enacted yet. It talks about the penalty framework, beneficial electrification credit, and there are also some corrections to the first rule package. It also goes into things about Article 321 buildings. Those are the affordable housing and houses of worship. So it talks about the prescriptive path requirements for compliance, and then also the penalties for non-compliance. It also discusses Local Law 88, which I mentioned in the beginning, which is the lighting and sub-metering compliance, because although that law was passed in 2009, compliance wasn't due until January 1st of 2025. So people have been waiting for, what defines, what the compliance path for this is. So this rule defined that. So some of the additional changes clarified that the eligible properties have to be calculated using either the building code occupancy groups that were in the law, in the original law, or Energy Star portfolio manager property types, which the law required the Department of Buildings to translate to from the building codes. But it can't be a combination of the both. So there were a restricted amount of building code occupancy groups in the original law, but the building code is meant for fire and life safety. It's not meant for energy usage. So energy usage is much more definitively defined through the Energy Star portfolio manager property types, and building owners are used to those because of their when they do their benchmarking, that's what they use. So it's much it's much easier for them to use the Energy Star portfolio manager types. But if they feel more comfortable and it's more advantageous to them to use the original building code occupancy groups, they can use those. They just can't use both of them for the same report. The other corrections to the rule added a marginal emissions coefficient for natural gas fuel cells that were installed prior to January 19th, 2023. And it requires distributed energy resources to be submetered for reporting. And then there were some corrections on the numbering of equations that were in the original rule package. Okay, so for the 320 buildings, those are the privately held buildings, there are two compliance responsibilities. So you can submit the building emissions report. If you don't submit the report by May 1st of 2025 for 2024, there is a penalty of the gross floor area times 50 cents per month. So there's significant fines for not reporting. If you do report, but you don't meet the emissions limits that are set for your building, the penalty is equal to whatever your emissions are minus the limit. So whatever you're over by times $268. And that's a yearly fee, a yearly penalty. So there are penalty mitigation opportunities for the first compliance period. There are things like unexpected or unforeseeable events, a fire, catastrophic event like Hurricane Sandy, different things like that. Those are outlined in the rule. And then there's also something that was in the original law called a good faith effort. So with the good faith effort, if a building is over its limit and they want to come to the department, they can apply for a good faith effort by showing that they've submitted their building emissions report and comply with any adjusted limit that they were given. Obviously, this is not for the first year. That they've complied with their benchmarking requirements and that they've complied with the local law 88 requirements. If they complete all of these, they either have to do a decarbonization plan, which I'll go into next, or they have to have a complete application for work approved by the DOB, or they have to show that they have built out for electric and are ready for electrification. They can show that they have previous compliance with the emissions limits. They can show that they're a critical facility, or they can apply for an adjustment under 320.7, which is a hardship adjustment. All of these are outlined in the second set of rules. So with the decarbonization plan pathway, the building must submit a plan for how it's going to attain net zero carbon emissions by 2050. In that plan, they have to have an energy audit, an inventory of all the major equipment, and then a list of all the alterations that are needed for compliance. So the timeline when those will be implemented, how they're going to pay for them, and then what they expect each of those alterations to produce in emission reductions. They also cannot use the purchase of RECs to comply with the emissions limits during this period. So they would submit the decarb plan. If they want to go for the good faith effort and submit a decarb plan, it has to be submitted by May 1st of 2025. They have to meet the 2024 emissions limit by May 1st, 2027. So whatever their limit was supposed to be in 2024, they can submit a decarb plan, have an extra 2 years to do their work in 2025 and 2026. And then in 2020, when they report in 2027, they have to have attained their limits, be under their limits. They also have to demonstrate by May 1st of 2028 that the work that will bring them to compliance with the next set of emissions is underway. And that would include a complete application for work approved by the DOB. So whatever they're trying to do to get them towards to attain their limits in 2030, they have to have that all designed and approved and submitted to the department. Okay, so as far as the enforcement framework is concerned, if the building is over their emissions limits, the DOB would issue them a notice of violation for the full penalty amount, and they can either pay the penalty or they can take their chances with adjudication by trial at oath. Or they can enter into mediated resolution with the department. So if they are offered mediation, it's a legally binding agreement with the department, and they have to be in compliance with that by the next annual building emissions report. If they are not, the DOB can issue violations and penalty amounts retroactively because they're not in compliance with their mediated resolution. Okay, so something we talked about earlier is beneficial electrification. Owners that replace fossil fuel equipment early with high efficiency space conditioning or water heating equipment can receive a credit against the emissions limits for the first or second compliance period. So let's say they want to install heat pumps, and they do that, and the emissions for their electric emissions would be they would get a negative coefficient against those emissions. Now, say they don't need them in the 2024 to 2029 period. They don't need to use them then. They could apply them when the emissions limits become stricter in 2030. So anything that is installed, any equipment that was installed that is any electrification that was installed between 2021 and 2026, it's not just the credit for those emissions, but it's double the credit. And then anything between 2027 and 2029, it wipes out those emissions. Okay, now we move on to Article 321, which again is the affordable housing or houses of worship. So they can either show that they're very compliant and they meet the more stricter limits that are imposed for 2030 and beyond, but they meet those now, then they're fine. Or they can implement these 13 measures and submit a report that shows that they are in compliance, and that has to be done by a retro commissioning agent. I think 9 of these are attestations, and then 4 of them have reporting requirements or sampling requirements. Okay, so this is something that is on our website, people can go to, but it tells you, you know, in Article 321, if you have greater than 35 units that are subject to rent regulation, or you're an FDFC co-op, not a rental, or, you know, these other criteria, then this is the pathway you follow. If you don't fit into this column, but you do have at least one rent regulated unit or 1+ rent regulated units, but not 35%, then you follow this compliance path, which basically says your limits, you get 2 years more, and your annual reports start in 2027. If you fit, if you don't fit into any of these two, but you fall under these categories, then you fall into the 2035 compliance, and your first annual reporting starts in May of 2036. So these are the where this is in the law, 320 or 321, 320.3.10.1. And these are also links. So if you go to our website, you can link and it'll take you right to that section of the code. Okay. So for these 321 properties, you have 2 requirements. You have to submit the report. If you don't submit a report, you get a $10,000 penalty. If you submit the report, but you don't demonstrate compliance, it's another $10,000 penalty. It's a $10,000 penalty. So if you don't submit the report, it would be both of these. So again, there's unexpected or unforeseeable events. There's eligible energy conservation projects that are eligible for penalty mitigation opportunities, or there's mediated resolution. Okay, so I mentioned Local Law 88, and since the second set of rules included those, I want to just talk a little bit about these. The Article 310, which is the part of the administrative code that talks about the upgrading of lighting systems, says that the lighting and power and controls must comply with the New York City Energy Conservation Code in effect at the time that the project was installed. Anything that was upgraded between July 1st, 2010 and December 31st, 2024. And it applies to residential and commercial buildings, but the dwelling units are excluded. For the submetering, that's Article 311 of the admin code, and that applies to floors or tenant spaces greater than 5,000 gross square feet or tenant spaces over 5,000 square feet. And this is for commercial buildings only. So the way that people would comply with Local Law 88 it's an attestation that's due on May 1st, 2025, and it's along with the 97 reporting. There will be a way for those who aren't subject to 97 but are subject to local law 88 to comply through the 97 portal. It has to be reported by an RDP, a registered design professional, which is either a New York State licensed PE or registered architect, or a licensed master electrician, or a licensed special electrician. And the penalties for failing to report compliance is $1,500 per law. Plus for the submetering, it's $500 for each covered tenant space where a submeter has not been installed. So there will be guidance documents that are coming out for all of the sections of the new rules that are discussed. There was a rule hearing for local law 97 on October 24th and for 88 on October 26th. Those just took place last week. There are some studies that are underway, and there's an industry study for manufacturing. There's an energy efficiency metric study. And there's a study for hospitals and nonprofits. There will be more rule packages that will, at least one, that deals with cogeneration units and distributed energy, and also the other adjustment 320.7, which is for financial hardship and for legal limitations. And then there's also work on aligning the different sustainability laws that may have different definitions and different different buildings that are covered, square footage and such. So if there are questions, we can be emailed at ghgemissions@buildings.nyc.gov. We meet each week to answer those questions. I'm on that team as well. And then here is a link for the accelerator, and Catherine is going to talk a little bit more about that. And then afterwards, we can take some questions if you have them.
Thank you, Holly. I will share my screen.
Thanks, Catherine.
No problem. Okay, hopefully you're all able to see that. Okay, so like Holly said, my name is Catherine Willis. I am an account manager here with the Accelerator.
Sorry, Catherine.
Holly, go ahead.
There we go. Now it's up. We can see you.
Okay, great. I was hearing a little bit of feedback, so if people want to mute themselves, feel free. Thank you so much. So yes, I am an account manager here with the Accelerator, and we are a free program out of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. So how do we fit into this whole local law 97, situation? As Holly mentioned, you just heard all the reasons behind the law. And so we're here to help building stakeholders, including owners and operators, managers, tenants, everybody involved, to help make it happen. And so we are the free technical assistance part of this citywide puzzle. And how do we do this exactly? Well, we have dozens of experts on our staff, including specialists who work with affordable buildings like the ones that Holly was mentioning. We have financing specialists, solar, new construction. I myself also work with existing and high performance buildings that need a lot of retrofit help. And we do this by connecting buildings, I should say, with service providers who can actually implement carbon reduction projects. We have a ton of no-cost trainings for building operators and stakeholders on our website, accelerator.nyc, that anybody can access. And we also, like I said, have financing staff available to speak with building stakeholders on incentives and financing, including the New York City Accelerator PACE program. Eligible buildings for the accelerator include any that are over 5,000 square feet. So even though local law 97 only applies to 25,000 square feet or above, we also help buildings that are smaller than that work on energy efficiency projects. If they're even smaller than 5,000 square feet, we'll refer you to a partner program. all you have to do is get in touch. We have phone number and website and email address that I will share momentarily. And you will be connected to a dedicated account manager like me who will give you that customized objective advice on the building's needs. And like I said, it's absolutely free, no catch, no cost or commitment. So here's some of that contact information that I mentioned, info@accelerator.nyc, or there's a contact form at accelerator.nyc/contact. The frontline person you'll speak to is a program coordinator, and then they will assign you to your account manager. And, you know, in the meantime, other free resources that are available on our website include information about Local Law 97 and other building energy laws like 88 and some of the other ones that Holly mentioned. We have technical primers that explain, you know, what are air source heat pumps, like what are these sort of interventions that you might want to explore, case studies, GHG emissions calculators, which I will demonstrate briefly, and which is our building energy snapshot tool, and those trainings that I mentioned. This is just a very kind of quick summary of what a building stakeholders path might look like with the accelerator. You know, we talk to them, we gather information about the building, we look at all of the opportunities and try to prioritize which projects make sense to do first in terms of carbon reduction and budget and various things. And then we work towards implementation and taking those prioritized projects, you know, link up with available incentives, which are either through utilities like Con Ed and National Grid, or state and local programs like NYSERDA. And of course, we also have a vetted contractor network within the accelerator that is accessible on our website too. And I will show you what that looks like in a moment. So just to give you like sort of examples of the kinds of information that we gather from buildings, here are a few of them. Again, these are non-exhaustive lists of things, but it's like the types of buildings, as well as any sort of projected penalties that might be coming up with Local Law 97. And then we talk about how we can counteract them through these, you know, various energy systems within each building. Again, as may have been mentioned previously, most buildings that are covered by Local Law 97 are currently compliant with the law for the first period, that 2024 through 2029. But then 2030 is where we will see a big shift where most buildings are not currently in compliance with those lower limits. So again, these are just some examples of the kinds of energy and greenhouse gas emission reduction projects that buildings might want to consider. So this is that building energy snapshot tool that I mentioned. It's again completely free on the accelerator.nyc website. You just scroll down a little bit, put the address in. Right away, it takes you to this map where you can see how the building stands, where it stands in terms of potential penalties, and what sort of data is publicly available about it. And you can even download the information to share with executive boards or, you know, co-op members or tenants or whoever might be interested. And there's another contact form information opportunity too. This is that search tool that I mentioned for our vetted contractor network. It's great. It's actually even more updated since I created this slide, but you can really narrow down, you know, who to reach out to based on building type and size and what sort of services and incentives you may be looking to implement. And one more time about that free learning center tool that we have as well. We have over 40 online trainings that are on all these different topics. And we partner with, you know, the best organizations in the city, including the Building Energy Exchange, Urban Green Council, the North American Passive House Network, and CUNY Building Performance Lab. When I first started working in this industry, I actually took some of these trainings myself. And now, you know, I'm helping to like spread the word about them. I will just mention that I am not a financing specialist, but we do have financing specialists on our team. And here are just some of the reasons why you might want to consider finance energy upgrades, or why you might want to finance your energy upgrades. Generally speaking, it just sort of opens up opportunities to do more, like get further into your upgrades. Think longer term in terms of local law 97 compliance, since the limits do get more stringent about every 5 years, and to preserve, building reserves for other uses, other emergencies and things that come up. So it's great that we are this free resource for buildings to get in touch with and say, okay, talk to me about my options in terms of financing projects, because of course we know without the money, things can't really get done. And last but not least, I wanted to give a plug to the New York City Carbon Challenge program. It is again, voluntary leadership program and a public-private partnership with leaders in all different sectors, private, institutional, nonprofit, that are pledging to really significantly reduce their carbon emissions. We have over 125 participants currently, including 13 that are committed to carbon neutrality by 2030. So if you or anyone is interested, feel free to visit nyc.gov/carbon challenge or email carbonchallenge@cityhall.nyc.gov. And with that, I'm going to just share our contact information one more time. And again, this is our local law 97 specific page that it's pulling up here, but feel free to, have anyone email or call us, get in touch, and get started on getting into compliance.
Holly, Catherine, thank you both so much for your presentations. I'll reach out to you, and if you could send those PDFs to me, I'll make sure they get distributed to the attendees. In the meantime, does anyone have any questions? I know it's a lot of information and kind of dense, but if there are any questions you'd like to address, we can take care of that now.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for your presentations. I was curious if there was a way that we can have maybe like a breakdown, or if there is like a breakdown maybe through NYC Accelerator of the properties in the districts that would be affected.
Yeah, we know the properties that are affected for the 2024 to 2029 time period. We can assemble those, and we are looking to arrange a meeting in Staten Island for all three of the districts, where we would invite those property owners to come to that meeting. What we've been doing with the mayor's office and a lot of the council members is that we've been doing local law 97 in your district events, and the accelerator has put together a flyer and a letter, and they incorporate the council members' information into that flyer. And, also, the council member can send their own as well. But we do have those lists. We're stretched a little thin right now, so we can give them to you. And we can, we'll work on that. Each of the council members should have gotten like a flyer that showed the percentage of buildings in their district that are in compliance and are out of compliance in the pretty recently.
Holly, I know you had those
Okay.
one-pagers, the spreadsheet that's on your sustainability website. It's about 600 sites in Staten Island. Is that kind of close to a list?
I'm sorry, can you say that question again?
Sure. There's a downloadable spreadsheet on the sustainability website that has about 600 properties listed in Staten Island. Is that kind of close?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I would have to see it.
Sure. Let me share my screen. This was, sorry, I jumped into the accelerator when Catherine was talking. When I pulled up the DOB sustainability website, there was a spreadsheet that could be downloaded.
Yeah, so that's the covered buildings list. So that's all of the buildings in Staten Island that are subject to local law 97.
Okay,
There will be, far fewer than that will be at risk for violations in the 2024 to 2029 period.
okay, great. Thank you for that. Just wanted to be sure.
And we're also updating that in the near future too. So we'll have, newer covered buildings lists.
Okay, great. Are
Thank
there any
you.
other questions? Okay. Christopher, did you have anything, or are we just we're set with Holly and Catherine?
Just here to support Holly.
Well done. Okay, well, DOB, thank you so much for the presentation. We'll loop back with you in terms of trying to get a targeted date and location for some of the district meetings as well. Okay,
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
us.
thank you. I appreciate the attendance and the information.
Have a good night.
You as well.
So
Take
much.
care.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
guys. Good
Catherine.
night.
Okay, everyone. I'll get the PDFs and get those emailed out to you this week. The minutes may take a little bit longer just to go through the meeting and make sure I have everything covered, but at least you'll have the PDFs to review back on. I know it's really dense information and a lot of technical language as well. I think if we have, a meeting with all Staten Island buildings, we'd need probably like the St. George Theater or a high school, for all the attendees. It might be better to break it into, Council District 49 and CB1, Council District 50 and CB2, and just have it sort of broken out to be district focused. Does that make sense, do you think?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Then what I'll do is visit with Vince, who is here. Say hello. Vince McDermott, who's our land use director,
Hello, everybody.
and reach out to you to see if we can coordinate that and at least have them come to each area with a more specific list of properties. When I first, pulled something off of open data, it was at least 700 properties. Now this new list looks like it has a little over 600, which is good. At least we're getting that down. But having something that's specific to your areas, I think will be a lot more meaningful than sort of this high level stuff. Okay.
Definitely.
Um,
Is it possible that we could also have a copy of the presentation that they gave today?
Yeah, I'll get the
Sent to us?
PDFs
Okay.
from them and email them out first. I'll have the minutes for you in a week or so, and then I'll send them again. But I want to get those PDFs out to you just to have something to chew on. I feel like this is like a final exam, and I'm going to have to like go through it and really, pour through the content that they're talking about. But to that end, we did not have any other questions on Local Law 97. Okay. In terms of correspondence, we did not have any this month. Is there any old business to review? Good, because I have 2 points for new business for you. First and foremost, next month we will have city planning come in and talk about the new ULURPs for the City of Yes for economic development. I know, excuse me, CB2 and CB3, you have those coming to present the land use this month. Joan? Oh, Joan's not here. I'll check with CB1, but I'm presuming that they'll be presenting there as well. But they are pushing it through to have a 60-day ULURP window for recommendations for community boards, borough board, and the BP. So I'm guessing by the end of the year, we'll have to have recommendations in. But we'll have that coming at the December borough board. And then for us right now, I want to talk about the Phragmites initiative that we're working on. Everyone remember Phragmites? This is primarily going to affect CB2 and CB3. Let me share my screen again. Okay. Everyone see this? This is the
Yes.
DEC wetlands mapper, and it relates specifically to the state-regulated freshwater. Those locations that we're really focusing on are 3 here, near South Beach, Midland Beach, and Oakwood Beach. So for Phragmites, essentially, an invasive grass reed that thrives in the wet soils around these wetlands that can cause issues when they get dry and be just a serious accelerator for brush fires. We did have a permit, unfortunately, that expired during the pandemic that allowed constituents to mow a specified distance around their property to create a fire break. We did file for a new permit last year. The good news is it took about 18 months to get, but we finally got it. And the even better news is that it is good through 2028. So we have 5 years for the permit before we have to go through the application process again. It is just these specific areas that are in this wetlands map. So you'll see, hopefully shortly, the BP will do a press conference and release about it. We're also looking to do some outreach to each of the community boards. We'll do some social media. We're also working on a targeted mailing list to constituents within each of these areas. So the process will be they contact us, we verify their location, we have them sign off a permit that says, or excuse me, a form that says, yes, I'm the owner, and then they will have the ability and that 6-page permit in hand to be able to mow and clear around the property. Roughly, it's about a 50-foot range from a paved street as well as their structure. With the caveat that they cannot mow between May and August of each year. That apparently covers the wildlife breeding areas that they do want to protect. Once that form is received, we'll get that to the constituent. They'll be able to carry on either with weed whackers or light tractors. And that hopefully will be going out, I would say, in the next week or 2 or 3. It is a little, let's see, let's stop that. There you all are. Again, specific to Mid-Island and the south end of the island, but I'll also get you 1-pagers that can at least inform your folks about any questions that constituents may have. They'll have the ability to apply for this permit either by phone, email, fax, or we'll have a specific page on the BP's website that they can put a form request in. So hopefully between those 4 methods, we'll at least get constituents touched and get the permit if they need it. And those are my 2 points of new business. Is there anything else that anyone might have? Well, I think we've had plenty of information for the day. So could I entertain a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Jerry, thank you. Elena, thank you as well. Cheers. Happy post-Halloween. Enjoy your November. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Thank y'all. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Take
Bye.
care.